The world of alcohol inks is amazing and diverse. Today I will show you two effects, one on a flat mold and another on a three-dimensional mold using craft inks, which I absolutely love. By the way, I will also do another lesson for you using these inks in a Petri dish where we will draw flowers. So let's get started and be patient. My name is Natalia Riumina, and we will create something that will surprise you. Look, I poured a flower into one mold. Here I will have a clock, and on the other side at the bottom I have a flower. I want to show you the serving effect, or what I call the smoke effect. If there is another name for it, please let me know and we'll rename it. Look, I mixed the liquid resin without letting it sit. I mixed it just like this while chatting with you, and I will continue working with it in the same way. Now, about the technique. This technique is used if you want to achieve a smoke effect, and it can only be done with liquid resin. I have 3 experiments with resin: liquid, thick, and medium consistency. You can find them on my YouTube channel. Right now, I'll demonstrate the liquid resin technique as it's the most classic approach. Now let's go over some important details. First and foremost, we need to take care of ourselves and our workspace. Cover and protect your work surface and ensure your table is level. This is crucial. Next, check the humidity levels, as liquid resin and inks are highly sensitive to humidity fluctuations. If the humidity exceeds 50%, you may encounter an amine blush on your resin surface. But what exactly is an amine blush? If the humidity is over 50%, you'll likely develop an amine blush on your resin surface. But what is an amine blush, you ask? Amine film is a thin crust of ice that covers the entire surface of the resin. The effect may not be noticeable if the temperature difference is not too large, but it is very critical in serving fillings because this film prevents the resin from settling properly. This applies to any technique involving flowers, serving, stone cutting, or even seascapes. If you need the resin to move, the amine film will prevent that movement. So please be careful and monitor the humidity closely. Even if the humidity level is off, it's not as critical as the temperature. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but I have the air conditioner and heater running. I literally dried out my workspace and maintained a normal humidity level so as not to upset the resin. So I mixed it up and will first demonstrate on a large mold, then show you the technique in more detail on a small mold in the classic style. I will first demonstrate on a large mold, then show you the technique in more detail on a small mold in the classic style. What else do you need to remember to make this work successful? Firstly, when we mix and create the effect with white pigment, it should not be a coloring pigment. What do I mean by that? When we create a serving filling, we are used to having colored tiers. Yes, we pour through the white and we color the white with pigment, specifically for dyeing resin. In this technique, you cannot use dye because you will get a different effect. You need to use either white powder, dry powder, yes, there are some with a light pearlescent effect, or white ink. There are white dry powder dyes, but only a little because they can settle into the liquid. So I am using white ink, and I will show you with this example. Look, they mixed a 2-component resin with component A and component B. Everything is clear. I always mix in a transparent cup to check and control that everything is thoroughly mixed. If we mix the resin poorly and there is a significant error, the resin simply won't harden or will boil in your cup. If there is a slight error, such as when unmixed strands of the component cling to the cup walls and go unnoticed by the artist who then pours it into the artwork or mold without the thorough mixing, cracks can form. The 2 components don't fully combine and mix, causing the material to crack when curing. Pigment or resin may leak from the cracks, or it may just result in an unsightly crack. So be careful. You can even pour the mixture from cup to cup to ensure everything is well blended. Always double check that the mixture is clear with no strands or inconsistencies. Now you can pour the transparent resin up to the desired volume. Be sure to note the volume of your resin and the maximum pour depth. As we learned when first studying resin, you cannot exceed the maximum pour depth for artistic resins. Depending on the resin, the maximum thickness may be 0.8 mm, 1.8 centimeters, 2.2 centimeters. It's critical that you know this specification for the resin you are using. Resin does not boil over. Look, in the classic mold, I also pour out the volume and leave literally 3 millimeters because I will still top it off with white resin. Now I separate about 40G for the white resin, for coloring with white resin, because I will need it for my 2 molds. You can even go up to 45G. Now I'll check myself on the scale. Yes, perfect, that's it. And now I'm coloring. The technique is actually super simple. The main thing is to understand that you don't need to color the white resin with pigment, but you need to color it with ink. Shake the ink really well and add 15 drops for my amount. And check for yourself too. Make sure the resin is, you see, it's milky like this. Of course, we won't achieve a dense color with ink alone. That's why I advised you to use dry pigment as well. I've run out of the dry pigment, so I will only be adding ink. Now I'll pour another 15G in total. For 45 grams, I have 30 drops of ink, just white ink, because improper mixing of the ink isn't as bad as improper mixing of the pigment, because the pigment doesn't cure by itself in the resin. The ink dries out, but it'll still be a disaster, an ugly, spoiled effect, so please be careful and monitor it. Check yourself, watch closely, mix it, don't hurry anywhere, prepare everything beforehand, think ahead, make a list in your head. What I need first, second, third, fourth. Check everything off the list, do everything, and let's get to work. And the result will make you happy, not upset. So I'm leaving the spatula. I have a polyethylene base here, so the spatulas can be reused many times. Now I'm taking a regular plastic bag. I'm pouring my resin in there, tying a knot. Here you go. Prepare the scissors, guys, and cut off a very, very thin tip. Because if you cut off a thick tip, then all the resin will just lay your product down. Now prepare the colors you want to use. I'm going to use bright blue and black. Shake them and open them. Have them opened. You will need them now. They will be useful in my work, and I will not use avocado green, but regular green. Prepare everything else too. Now take scissors and cut very finely. Here is the white nozzle. Hold the upper so that the air can escape. Now the most fun part, dripping the ink. I start with the dark ones, like this, with light, non-pressing movements. You see, I pressed hard here and a little spilled at the junction between colors. I dripped the next one. Blue, it's super effective, super interesting, and super amazing. And you know, how? I never get sick of watching how the ink behaves. It's like I feel like some sort of alchemist. At this moment, I've done that. Now I'm decorating the middle here. I want to add a little opal stone. I want to add gold here because how could I go without it? Black stones, I think that's enough for... Maybe you can add some more of these C ones, and now I want to do the opposite. Starting with the dark areas, I'll have black outlines here for shading. You understand you can do it however you like. I'm showing you the basic principle, but you can adapt it to your own style and mood, however you prefer. You can also add some green in the middle like this. Now I'm adding some brighter blue accents like this. And now for the fun part, we draw little lambs or curls. It doesn't really matter which because the resin will smooth it all out later. There's no critical technique for how you apply them. Personally, I like these little curly lambs in Vincil's monogram style. It's just because it's fun to do. So I'm drawing these swirls going all the way to the edge. I took some resin and I'm going to pour it into the center so that it spreads out evenly. Move it aside. There we go. Now again, following our contour and going to the edge once more. You see, you need to have a high enough border in the mold so that you can make swirls like this. You can twist it once from the center, no more than that. Or you can swirl it around several times. Now I want to add some blue ink along the contour and some olive, I meant green. And do the same thing with anything else that gets in your way so it doesn't interfere with your hand movements. Same process, swirl the inks around. The swirls are a bit smaller here because my mold size is slightly smaller than in. Just pour, just twist. You can do it in 2 rows. You see, I've already gone to the second circle, so we'll also spread it with a transparent resin. Here we move it apart, and on the white again, along the contour once again, while the resin. Everything will now be pulled to the center. I leave it to polymerize, and demolding awaits us. Fingers crossed, it's always a different effect in general. Always, no matter what you do, it always turns out a different effect. Everything, wait guys, this is how this technique looks on a volumetric mold. You can buy a silicone mold. You can create it with a silicone paste. You can use a silicone sealant. The thickness here is 2.2 centimeters, all the same movements. I needed the liquid resin. I poured the volume, immediately decorating the middle so as not to waste time later. I have opal stones as they were in the beginning, and I want black stones here. So I drop ink in a completely chaotic order. So let's start with the green ones. Wipe the nose well. Because my nose dries up, then it begins to behave ugly like this. So purple, I use black there. And here I want to make a purple avocado along the edge here. This kneading will turn out here, so that's it. Instead of a bag, I will just spill from a glass. White resin, I also mixed it with white ink. I make a thin nose and spill it with a spiral. Take turns like this, and I won't push. I leave it right away, let it fall off as it is, but you can push it apart, as I showed in the first lesson, so the effect will be more gentle. So I went to the second circle, everything. We do not remove the bubbles, we leave it to close. Well, you know, one more secret. I will be happy to look at your works. Then I went on edit a lesson on the Petri technique. We will also play with ink. I will show everything, tell you step by step. Excellent to everyone, mood of a productive day, and no aminka, not a speck of dust.